Welcome to the next part in our Rick and Morty app series. We're going to pick up where we left off working on the search input view, i.e. this pink red looking thing up here. So hit that like button before we continue. Subscribe if you haven't subscribed to the channel for some odd reason yet, and let's continue. Specifically, this bottom 50% of this pink view, we talked about having dynamic options show up there. And that's what we're going to actually create in this video, the view in particular, since we did update the view model already. One thing I'm going to do before actually showing those views via the for loop that we've added here is we only want to have this height, allow space for options if options exist. Right now, the way that we're configuring the height of this search input view is in the search view, we're kind of just hard coding its constraint to 110 points tall. That is not exactly what we want to do. What I want to do is, based on the view model, I want to go and actually create this more appropriately. And the way I'll do that is by saying that if this type is equal to episode, i.e. we don't have any options, we'll go ahead and keep a different height, otherwise we'll do 110. So I'll just do it inline here. I'll say if this equals episode, we'll have a height of perhaps like 55, otherwise we'll go and do 110. If you're not familiar with this question mark colon, syntax is called a ternary operator. It's more or less a if-else statement. So if this thing is true, do this, otherwise do that. So let's build and run, and let's make sure that in the episode case, we're not seeing the extra pink space at the bottom. So we'll jump into episodes here. I'll click into this, and cool, we're not seeing the extra pink space because our search bar is actually taking up the entirety of the space there. The other thing that would be great to do that I will actually just throw in here at the moment is when our view is fully loaded and appears, we should probably have the keyboard pop up automatically. And it's quite simple to do that. I will expose on our primary search view here a function, and this function will basically be public func present keyboard. And we're going to call the same function on the search input view. So I'll say search input view dot present keyboard. Now we need to actually create this function. If we try to build right now, it'll yell at me. So let me jump into that search input view, and I will stick into here, present keyboard, and I'll say search bar dot become first responder, i.e. it becomes the focus thing to the system in the responder chain. I won't go too deep into those constructs, but that's kind of the gist of it. And back in our view controller for search, essentially we'll override the view did appear function. So here we'll do view did appear, super view did appear, passing and animated, and then finally I can actually say search view present keyboard, and that will bubble the call up to the search input view. So let's build and run, and let's see if everything is actually A, compiling, and B, working. So I'll come into here, and boom, there's our keyboard. So we can now actually start typing a character's name. We have that pink bottom 50. We can build out the option views. So let's do it. Let's go back to our search input view. And bear with me, Xcode is being Xcode and being slow. So let's see, search input view. And we created this for loop where essentially we're looping over the elements we want to show. So let's see how we can go about doing this. So if we have 1 or 2, we can, I guess, hard code it. The other thing that we probably want to do is we probably want to have the width be more appropriate. So instead of actually doing a just buttons with constraints, maybe this is a good place to leverage a stack view. So let's actually do that. So I will create a stack view here. And a stack view lets us basically stack elements horizontally or vertically and distribute them proportionally or by some other mechanism. Admittedly, I actually haven't worked with a stack view in like 6 years, so bear with me here. So I will actually create a stack view like so. We are going to say translate auto resizing mask into constraints is false. We'll want to add this. And we'll also want to activate some constraints on this. But before I do that, let's actually go ahead and set some things up on here. So there is a few properties that I totally don't remember. So let's see if I can remember them or find them here. So we want to set up the actual direction of this. So let me click into this. And let me see what properties reside on here. And you're kind of getting the, the version of this that we're going to do together. So we have add arranged subview. That's how we're going to actually add a view. We have an insert. Okay, axis is what we want to set. We have axis, distribution, and alignment. Those are the three things that we want to set. So axis will be horizontal. The stack view's distribution, I believe there is a fill equally is what we want. And then we also want the alignment to be, I guess we can do center, or I guess we can do fill as well. Let's do center here. So good deal. So let's go ahead and actually create our buttons in here and add them to the subview of stack, or as an arranged view, I should say. So let me actually do ns layout constraints. Bear with me here, ns layout constraints. We'll activate this. Let me say top anchor is a constraint equal to the search bar bottom anchor. So flush to the bottom of the search bar, we'll have left, right, and bottom. This will be bottom. This will be, I guess, left anchor, and this will be the right anchor. Essentially, we'll just pin this onto the four sides. Alrighty, and let me set a background color on this to something like, let's do a different color. I'm kind of tired of seeing red. We'll do blue, and I'll get rid of the system pink in here and give this a build and run. And if I click on search, we should see this blue view here, which in fact we do. Awesome. So let's now, in our for loop here, create some buttons. So we're going to say our button is a UI button. And we're not going to add a frame to it. We'll see momentarily how we're going to actually get this to work. But I'll say button.setTitle, and the title will be option.rawValue for the normal state. And let's also say button.background color will be system yellow. I'll say button set title color, and we'll go with label for, once again, the normal state. We'll also go and say button.add target. Essentially, when we tap on the button, something should happen, and we're going to want to disambiguate which button is tapped. And we'll take a look at in a moment how we're going to do that. And this is going to be for a simple tap, otherwise known as a touch up inside. We'll need to create this Objective-C selector here, otherwise it is going to yell that that function does not exist. And most importantly, let's say add arranged subview button. So we're going to clean this code up in a second because we can, move this into like a function and make it simpler. But let me go ahead and build and run. And let's see if we actually see some buttons. So cool, we see some buttons here. In this case, they're equally spaced. Let's see what they look like on the location screen. And in this case, it takes up the entirety of the width, which is exactly what we wanted, which is awesome. So let's clean all of this stuff up because it's getting a little bit messy. So let's go and put the stack view creation into another function. So I'll say create option stack view. And here I'll go ahead and say private func create option stack view. Now we do need to return an instance of this stack view so we can add arranged views to it. So I will just return it here and mark this function as returning something. And respectively here, I can say let's stack view equals create options stack view. And for our buttons here, we want to actually disambiguate via the sender, which button did I tap? Because it's important, right? We need to know what the heck we tapped. And the way we'll do that is by, instead of looping over the option in options, I'll loop over x in 0 up until options.count. And by doing so, we can say the current option is the element in options at the X position, right? So let's say there's two things in here, this will be 0, 1, right? So we're using the index to basically get that out. And the reason we're doing that is because, you'll see in a moment here, we're gonna now say our button.tag will be X. We're gonna change this, we'll do did tab button, except now this will actually bring in the sender. So bear with me here. Here we'll say did tap button, and here I'll just put a colon. And let me underscore this. Alrighty, so this will pass in an instance of the sender. And now here I can actually get the tag out again. So I can say button.tag, and this should be sender.tag. And the way we get the appropriate option is as follows. So we know we have a view model already here, so we'll unwrap the view model.dynamic options, or view model dot, I guess we just called it options. And we want to make sure we have those options. And the way we get the option now is we say selected is options at the given tag, and I will print out did tap, and we'll say selected.raw value. So let's just recap. We moved the creation of the stack view to a dedicated function. Right now we had all of our public things down here, so I am going to mark this as public just to get some visual separation between some of the stuff that we have going on, because this view has gotten a little large. But we moved the stack view to its own function. Here we're creating the button as well, which is being, a tag is being set on it now. And let's see, I don't want a background color on this actually. Actually, maybe I do. Maybe I'll go ahead and say, let's go ahead and do secondary system background. And instead of setting just a label, I'll also set on here maybe a font size, which actually brings me to setting an attributed title instead of a title. We'll say set attributed title and this attributed string, and this lets me actually go and set attributes on it. So our string will be the same thing here. The state will be normal. .normal, and this attributed title lets us set some nice fancy properties on it, like font and color and all that. So let me just line break it so we can actually do it more appropriately. So we'll do here a font, and I'll say this is UI font, system font, and we want to do this with a size maybe 18, and we'll do a weight of medium. And the other thing we'll do is we'll do a color, which I believe is called a foreground color for this attributed string, and this will be a label color, like so. We're just looking for label. And we can actually delete the set title and set title color. Whoops, let's jump back here. Looks like Xcode jumped down. So cool, we're creating this button here. Let's go and build it and run this and see if it actually works or if I just epically broke something. So we'll come into here, we have both of our options. It would be kind of nice if we had a little bit of spacing. I think our stack view has a way to add spacing. So let's see, we do have spacing here. We can actually go ahead and say, let's add like 6 points of spacing so our buttons are not like flush up against each other. All right, that looks so much better. So I can tap on this and we expect to get a printout, did tap on status, beautiful. Tap on gender, we get did tap on gender, awesome. And we have our search view basically looking pretty darn good. I kind of want to round the corners on these buttons as well, so bear with me while I decide to nitpick and make this look a little nicer. I'm going to say the corner radius is going to be perhaps 6. And I'll also go ahead and abstract this to its own function. So let me see how we can do this. We'll say that, let me cut all of this. Let button is create button with option, and then tag will be X. And let's create this function right here. This will be create button, and we'll pass in an option, which will be our RM search input view model, view model dot dynamic option. Tag will be an integer, and this will create and return our button. And I'll just paste everything back into there. And let me just line break some of these here, these parameters, so it's a little more readable, a little more friendly. Go ahead and build, and let's see if we're getting yelled at. It looks like we are, because we changed this to be tag. Still getting yelled at because we are not returning said button down here. We do want to return it. And now this function here is far simpler. We create the stack view, we iterate over this, and we basically create a button every single time. Build and run to make sure I didn't totally botch something. And it looks like we are still pretty good. One thing I'll briefly touch on before wrapping this video up is we want to actually tap on this and hand this off to either a controller or some other way, a presenter, to present a way to select either a status or a gender, right? They are supposed to be fixed options. So we do want to go and present some screen for that. So we'll leverage the delegate pattern here. We're going to create a protocol, which will be this input view delegate, and we'll have this be any object. And the function we'll have inside of here is func rm search input view did select option, and the option will basically be the rm search input view model dot dynamic option. So we'll notify somebody that this option was indeed selected. We will have a delegate here like so. And finally, when we come down here in our function where we now know what we have selected, we can say delegate, go and actually call this function with the selection at hand, which we have called selected. So if you build, everything should be good. Now let's actually implement this because I'm kind of on a roll now and I don't want to forget. We have this view in our search input view, and what I can do is say search input view, or we have the search input view in our search view, I should say. Naming is getting a little confusing. We'll make the delegate be self here, and we want to conform to that protocol here. So I'm going to come all the way down here. I will say extension rm search view, conform to that delegate, and we have a single function in here. And essentially what we want to do when this is called is we want to just bubble up this delegate back to our search controller via another delegate. So let's create another protocol here. And bear with me if you're a little confused, it will make sense momentarily. I'll create another function, and this is going to be an rm search view, same naming convention, did select option. Option is rm search input view model dot dynamic option. Similar to any other view, we'll have a instance of this in a weak capacity. So weak var delegate will be this guy. And finally, we can just propagate the call up, right? So what I mean here is we can say delegate, call that function, self for the view, option will be option. And finally, the super last thing we're going to do is back in our search controller, we want to say this search views delegate will be self. So in view did load, let me just line break this because it's bugging me. Here we can actually say we have a search view, so search view, let's do search view, delegate will be self, and make sure you conform your controller, which is a rm search view controller, to the delegate here and conform by implementing it. So here we'll print out should present option picker. All right, so let's go and give this a run. Let's see why I have a warning here. All right, looks like that warning actually went away. It was Xcode just being Xcode. And we'll open up the console here. Let me come into the character search. Let's see if we have anything in here. Looks like we have some dumb things going on. Begin appearance transition. It is yelling at me. All right, let's ignore that. I'll clear it. And let's say I want to select a gender for a character. So I'll go ahead and hit gender, and it's now saying should present option picker. So we obviously are not presenting anything yet, but we are able to successfully get the call bubbled up to our search view controller. In the next part, what I'll take a look at is actually, creating a configurable picker, some other screen, might be a bottom sheet, I haven't quite decided yet, and actually propagating the options in there such that the user can select something, and we'll want to actually go and probably update the UI too, right? So if we don't have, anything selected, it'll just say gender. Otherwise, if we select male, this should change to male and probably change its color also. So that's all I've got in this video. Drop a like before clicking over to the next part. Subscribe if you're new here. Connect on LinkedIn and all the socials. I'm fairly active on LinkedIn these days. So if you guys want to say hi, go ahead and follow over there. Thanks for watching. I'll see you in the next part.